The rain fell in soft, persistent sheets, turning the streets of the small town into a mirror of gray and melancholy. Sarah pulled her thin jacket tighter around her, shielding her little daughter, Lila, from the chill. The 6-month-old rested against her chest, her tiny hands clutching the edge of Sarah's sweater. Lila's wide eyes scanned the bustling grocery store, unaware of the heavy weight her mother carried in her heart. Sarah had never imagined motherhood would feel like this, a constant balancing act between exhaustion and love, between bills and nourishment, between despair and hope. After her husband had passed unexpectedly, she was left alone, with debts, rent, and the tiny life depending entirely on her. And now, as she pushed a small shopping cart toward the baby aisle, the cruel reality of her financial situation settled like a stone in her chest. There was the can of formula that would feed Lila for the next few days. The brand was expensive, but it was the only one that agreed with her daughter's delicate stomach. Sarah reached for it, the price tag glaring up at her like a challenge. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the knowledge that her meager savings would not cover it. She glanced around the aisle. Other shoppers were absorbed in their own worlds, eyes focused on shelves, phones, or conversations. No one seemed to notice her struggle, and Sarah felt an ache of loneliness that pierced deeper than the rain outside. She held Lila closer, whispering softly, "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy's trying." At the register, the cashier scanned the formula, and Sarah felt her stomach knot. The total flashed on the screen, well beyond what she had in her wallet. Her heart sank. She looked down at Lila, whose tiny fingers clutched hers, and knew what she had to do. With a trembling voice, she said, I'm going to have to return this. I can't afford it right now." Her cheeks burned with shame. The cashier gave a polite nod, clearly trained not to pry, and began to remove the item from the counter. Sarah's hands fumbled, and she almost dropped the can. Lila whined, her tiny voice breaking through the hum of the store. Sarah's eyes filled with tears she could not hold back. It was then that someone's presence registered beside her, not intrusive, not loud, but quietly observant. She looked up to see a man, sharply dressed in a dark coat, his hair neatly combed, standing a few feet away. His eyes were gentle, yet curious, as if he had noticed not just a return formula, but the story behind it. Ethan was 35, a billionaire who had built his empire from nothing, and now lived in penthouses that touched the clouds. He had wealth, power, and the kind of confidence most people envied. But today, none of that mattered. Today, he saw a woman cradling her child, torn between love and survival, and something inside him shifted. Sarah turned away, pushing the cart back toward the aisle, ready to leave the store defeated. She hated the sensation of being observed, of being pitted. Pride had always been her shield, but today it felt like a fragile thing that might shatter at any moment. The rain outside mirrored her mood, relentless and unyielding. As she passed in front of the store, she muttered softly, "I'm so sorry, Lila. Mommy will figure it out." Ethan followed at a discreet distance, his mind racing. He could not ignore the scene, the small, struggling mother, the frightened little girl, the humiliation of having to return something so essential. Wealth had given him almost everything, but empathy, he realized, was what connected him to the world beyond his glass towers. Sarah pushed the cart through the automatic doors, and a gust of wind and rain hit her like a wave. Her umbrella collapsed, useless against the storm. Lila began to cry, tiny fists banging against Sarah's chest. Her heart broke anew. How could anyone endure this? How could she endure this every single day? Ethan stepped closer now, under the shelter of his own umbrella. "Excuse me," he said gently. Sarah looked up, startled. There was something in his tone, soft, kind, that made her hesitate. I can't, she stammered, unsure whether to run or break down completely. He smiled faintly, not in a patronizing way, but with genuine warmth. "I noticed you were having some trouble with the formula," he said. "If you want, I can help." Sarah blinked, confusion and suspicion warring on her face. I don't need charity," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the rain. "I'm not offering charity," he replied. "Consider it a small favor for your little girl." His eyes softened as he glanced at Lila, who was now staring at him with wide, curious eyes. Sarah's pride surged, but so did the desperation she had been fighting all day. Finally, with a shaky nod, she said, "Thank you, but I really shouldn't." "You should," he interrupted gently, producing his wallet with an effortless gesture. "She deserves this, doesn't she?" Tears blurred Sarah's vision. The generosity, so unexpected, felt like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. "Yes, yes, she does," she whispered, voice breaking. Ethan handed the formula to her and added a small blanket, soft and warm, perfect for Lila. "There," he said. "She'll be cozy tonight." For the first time that day, Sarah smiled through her tears, rocking Lila gently. The little girl cooed, reaching for the colorful blanket. In that brief moment, the weight of the world seemed lighter, and Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Ethan watched silently, feeling a pull he could not explain. It was not about money, nor about impressing anyone. It was simply about witnessing a life weighed down by struggle and offering something to lift it even a little. Sarah thanked him again, more softly this time, and walked toward the street, the rain still falling. Ethan followed at a respectful distance, unwilling to intrude but unable to leave her in that moment of quiet despair. And as Sarah disappeared into the drizzle, holding her daughter close, Ethan knew that something in his life was about to change, though neither of them could yet see how. The rain had not let up. Sarah trudged through puddles on the sidewalk, her small umbrella useless against the wind. Lila fussed in her arms, her tiny cheeks pink from the chill. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the world rested squarely on Sarah's shoulders. She had returned home after the grocery store, formula and blanket in hand, and yet the sense of shame and worry refused to leave her. When she unlocked the door to her tiny apartment, she was greeted by the familiar hum of the radiator, the slightly musty scent of old carpets, and the soft cooing of Lila. It should have been comforting, yet Sarah felt exhausted in every possible way, physically, emotionally, and financially. Bills sat unopened on the small kitchen counter, some threatening, overdue notices. Even as she set the blanket around Lila and watched her daughter's tiny hands curl around it, Sarah couldn't stop the gnawing fear that she was failing at being a mother. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly on the kitchen table. She picked it up, expecting perhaps a work message. But it wasn't from her job, nor a friend. She recognized a number from the grocery store. Hesitant, she answered. "Hello?" she said, voice trembling slightly. "Hi, Sarah." Warm, calm voice said. "It's Ethan, the man from the store." Sarah froze. Her first instinct was to hang up. She didn't want charity. She didn't want involvement with someone so wealthy that it might make her feel small. But curiosity, and perhaps a spark of hope, made her stay on the line. "I just wanted to check that you and Lila got home okay," Ethan continued. There was no judgment in his tone, only genuine concern. Sarah felt her defenses soften. "Yes, we made it home. Thank you again. I don't even know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," he said softly. "I just wanted to make sure she's fed and warm. That's all that matters." Sarah stared at her daughter, who had now fallen asleep, wrapped in the blanket. The little bundle of innocence seemed to radiate peace, even when the world felt so heavy. She's asleep now," Sarah said, her voice catching. "It's just hard sometimes, you know? I work so much and I still worry." Ethan's voice lowered in sympathy. "I understand more than you think. I may have money, but I know what it feels like to feel alone, to feel responsible for someone you love more than anything." The word struck a chord with Sarah. She didn't know why, but she felt a rare comfort talking to him, someone she had just met. I just don't want to be a burden," she admitted. "You're not a burden," Ethan said firmly. "Not for me, and not for anyone who truly matters." A small, awkward silence followed, but it was not uncomfortable. For once, Sarah didn't feel judged. She didn't feel like she had to hide her exhaustion, her tears, or her worries. The kindness in Ethan's tone made her heart feel lighter, even as reality still pressed in from all sides. Over the next few days, Ethan's gestures became consistent, though never overwhelming. He would text her to check if she had enough formula for Lila, or if she needed diapers. Sometimes, He would leave a small grocery delivery outside her door. Sarah was hesitant at first, pride battling necessity, but each gesture was thoughtful and sincere, never demanding anything in return. One afternoon, as Sarah struggled to calm a fussy Lila after a long night of crying, the doorbell rang. Startled, she opened the door to find a small package with a note in elegant handwriting. For Lila, a little something to keep her cozy. From someone who believes in you both. Inside the package was a soft, plush blanket, some baby toys, and a few jars of formula, more than enough to last her through the week. Sarah's hands shook. Tears pricked her eyes again, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than despair. She stepped outside, glancing around. There was no one in sight. Somehow, knowing that someone out there cared enough to notice, enough to act, changed something inside her. It wasn't about the money or the items. It was about the acknowledgement that she and Lila mattered. A week later, Ethan showed up in person, not in a showy way, but quietly, as if he belonged in her world just for a moment. He knelt down to Lila's level, smiling warmly. "Hello, little one," he said softly. Lila blinked at him, her small fingers reaching toward his hand. Ethan laughed quietly, a sound that seemed to fill the small apartment with warmth. Sarah couldn't help but smile, too. "You don't have to keep coming," she said gently. "You've already helped so much." "I know," he replied, "but I want to make sure you're both okay. It's important to me." His voice carried a sincerity that made Sarah pause. There was no hidden motive, no expectation, just pure human concern. That evening, as Ethan helped her soothe Lila to sleep, Sarah found herself sharing small pieces of her life with him. The struggles with work, the loneliness after her husband's death, and the constant fear of failing her daughter. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel embarrassed to admit that she sometimes didn't know how she would manage. Ethan listened, truly listened, without interruption or judgment. In return, he shared fragments of his life, carefully choosing words that revealed vulnerability behind his confident, successful exterior. He told her the loneliness of wealth, of the friends who never understood him, of the nights he wished for someone to simply care. By the time Lila drifted into a peaceful sleep, a quiet bond had formed between Sarah and Ethan. It was fragile, tentative, but undeniable. Something about the way he had noticed her, not just a returned formula, but her struggle, her humanity, made her believe that perhaps life could be kinder than it had been. As Ethan stood to leave, Sarah felt a strange mixture of gratitude and hesitation. I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just take care of her, and take care of yourself." Before leaving, he gently handed Sarah a small envelope. Inside was a note with his number and a simple message. "Call me anytime, not for charity. Just if you need someone to listen." Sarah stared at it, heart pounding, unsure how to respond. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time, a tiny, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. As she watched him walk away into the evening rain, she whispered softly to Lila, who was now sleeping soundly, "Someone out there cares, baby. Someone out there really cares." And for the first time in weeks, Sarah allowed herself a small, honest smile. The following weeks settled into a rhythm neither Sarah nor Ethan could have anticipated. Ethan's thoughtful gestures continued, sometimes a delivery of baby essentials, sometimes a simple text asking how Lila was. But gradually, the kindness turned into something more personal, a quiet presence in Sarah's otherwise isolated life. One morning, Sarah woke to Lila giggling from her crib, bright sunlight spilling across their small apartment. The previous night had been rough. Lila had been restless, and Sarah had barely slept. Yet, there was a small envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a tiny card and a neatly wrapped book. For Lila, so she can dream big. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, not just because of the gift, but because someone out there had taken the time to think of them, to care. She held Lila close, whispering, "See, baby? Someone believes in us." By mid-morning, there was a soft knock on the door. Startled, Sarah opened it to find Ethan standing there, umbrella in hand, though it was no longer raining. He smiled gently. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. Sarah hesitated. "You don't need to." "I mean, I'm fine," she said, unsure why she felt a flicker of anxiety mixed with relief. "I wanted to check on you and Lila." "Nothing else," he said simply. There was no pressure, no expectation, just concern. As Ethan entered, Lila crawled toward him with curious eyes. "Hello, little one," he said softly. Lila reached out, giggling as Ethan picked her up, rocking her gently. The sight warmed Sarah's heart. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this comfortable around someone who wasn't family or a friend obligated by duty. Over the next hour, they spoke quietly. Sarah told him about her struggles with balancing work, bills, and raising Lila. She admitted the nights when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her and the fear that she was failing her daughter. Ethan listened, truly listened, without interrupting, without offering unsolicited advice. Then he shared a glimpse of his own life, how wealth had not protected him from loneliness, how friends often misunderstood him, and how his successes sometimes felt hollow without genuine human connection. For the first time in years, Sarah felt understood. She realized that despite their different worlds, they shared a fundamental experience: the fear of being alone while trying to protect someone they loved deeply. But not all feelings were simple. Sarah struggled with pride. "I don't want to depend on you," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I need to stand on my own for Lila." Ethan's expression softened. "I'm not asking you to depend on me," he said gently. "I just want to help. That's all. And sometimes it's okay to accept help, especially when it's offered out of genuine care." Sarah wanted to argue, but something in his eyes, the sincerity, the empathy, made her pause. Perhaps accepting help did not make her weak. Perhaps it made her human. A few days later, an unexpected challenge tested that fragile bond. Lila fell ill with a high fever, and Sarah panicked. She juggled phone calls at her part-time jobs, searched for nearby pharmacies open late, and tried to calm her crying daughter. Exhausted and frightened, she realized she couldn't handle it alone. Without thinking, she dialed Ethan's number. "Please, can you come?" she pleaded. Her voice cracked. Within minutes, he arrived, carrying a small bag of medicine and essentials. He stepped inside without hesitation, kneeling beside her as they checked Lila's temperature and gave her medicine. His calm presence steadied Sarah, who felt her panic slowly dissipate. As Lila drifted to sleep in Ethan's arms, Sarah realized something profound. She trusted him, not just with Lila, but with her own vulnerability. In a world that often felt cold and indifferent, Ethan's kindness had become a lifeline. The following week brought a symbolic gesture that cemented their growing bond. Ethan returned with a few simple renovations for Lila's nursery: a fresh coat of paint, a small crib, and a shelf for books and toys. Nothing extravagant, just thoughtful, practical improvements that made the apartment brighter and safer for her daughter. Sarah watched, overwhelmed, as Ethan assembled the crib with a quiet focus. Lila crawled toward him, delighted, and Ethan laughed, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to echo through the small apartment. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," Ethan replied, looking at her earnestly. "Seeing you both safe and happy is thanks enough." That evening, as they all sat in the newly brightened nursery, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't romantic, at least not yet, but it was more profound. The star of family built not by blood, but by care, trust, and shared love. Yet, even as their bond deepened, Sarah's pride and independence created a subtle tension. She didn't want to feel indebted, and she worried about the perception of others. Meanwhile, Ethan faced skepticism from his own world. Friends and staff questioned why he invested so much time and attention in someone so far removed from his own life. But he didn't care. His heart had chosen what logic could not explain. One quiet night, Sarah reflected on the whirlwind of events. The darkness of her past months, the endless worry, the loneliness, was slowly giving way to hope. The little gestures of kindness, the shared moments of vulnerability, and the simple presence of someone who truly cared had changed the way she saw the world. Ethan had not just given them gifts or help. He had given them validation, comfort, and the rarest of things, the belief that life could be gentle, even in hardship. And Sarah knew, deep in her heart, that she could no longer face life as she once had, not alone, not without acknowledging the power of human connection. As she tucked Lila into the crib that night, Sarah whispered softly, Maybe life can be better than I thought." Outside, the moonlight reflected softly on the apartment walls, a quiet promise that brighter days were coming. And for the first time in months, Sarah allowed herself to dream, not just for survival, but for happiness, for hope, and for the beginnings of family she never imagined could exist. Sunlight streamed through the small apartment windows, painting the nursery in warm golden hues. Lila sat on the floor, happily stacking blocks, while Sarah watched her with a gentle smile. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of kindness, care, and subtle miracles. She no longer felt the constant weight of hopelessness pressing down on her shoulders. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Ethan stood there, holding a small basket of fresh fruits and a bouquet of flowers. He grinned, kneeling down to greet Lila, who squealed with delight and crawled straight into his arms. "Good morning, little one," he said, spinning her gently. Lila giggled uncontrollably, reaching for his face. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't realized she was missing for so long. Ethan's presence no longer felt unusual. It felt like part of the life she had quietly dreamed of, a life where she wasn't alone. "Thank you for everything," Sarah said softly as Ethan handed the basket. "You've done so much for us already." Ethan shook his head, a gentle smile on his face. "I've only done what anyone should do. And, well, I think I needed this as much as you did." Sarah blinked, slightly startled. "Needed this?" "Yes," he admitted, sitting across from her. "I may have everything I thought I wanted, but life felt empty. Watching you care for Lila, seeing your strength, your love, it reminded me what really matters." The words touched Sarah deeply. She realized that the bond they had formed went beyond simple kindness. It was mutual, built on understanding, trust, and shared vulnerability. There was a quiet moment as Lila played between them, her laughter filling the apartment with life. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude and something more, a hope she hadn't dared to feel before. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "Sarah, I want you to know that I'm here, not just with gifts or help, but with me. If you ever need support, a friend, or someone to rely on, I'm here, for both of you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. She took a deep breath, the weight of her pride and fear lifting slightly. I'd like that," she said, her voice trembling but sincere. "I want us to be a family. Not in the traditional sense, but together." Ethan's smile widened, genuine and warm. "Together," he echoed. He reached out, taking Sarah's hand gently, a promise unspoken but deeply understood. The morning passed in quiet contentment. Ethan helped tidy the nursery while Sarah prepared breakfast, Lila toddling between them with laughter and excitement. It was ordinary, simple, yet extraordinary in its quiet perfection. As the day drew to a close, Sarah tucked Lila into her crib. Ethan stood beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "We'll face everything together," he whispered. Sarah nodded, a sense of peace washing over her for the first time in years. Outside, the sun broke fully through the clouds, illuminating the city with a warm, golden light. Sarah knew their journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges, but for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She had help, support, and a growing love that was patient, kind, and unwavering. And as she watched Ethan lift Lila into his arms, spinning her gently while she laughed, Sarah allowed herself to believe in something she hadn't dared to hope for, that love, kindness, and family could come from the most unexpected places. In that small apartment, amidst laughter, sunlight, and newfound hope, Sarah realized that their lives had changed forever. And this time, it was for the better.